Would you like to know the skills and attributes that make a great enterprise architect? If so, this video is for you. In today's video, we're going to discuss the archetype of the perfect enterprise architect. Not just the job title, not just the org chart, but the ideal skill set that's going to make a great enterprise architect, an enterprise architect that's truly successful. See, great enterprise architects are not diagram people. Great enterprise architects are business translators, they're strategy enablers, they're risk reducers, and they're change leaders. And the key is I'm going to break down the set of skills that it really takes to be a great strategy consultant in the world of enterprise architecture and what it needs to take and why. So the first thing that you need to have a great set of skills in as an enterprise architect, and honestly any architect like a cloud architect or a security architect, is strategy. See, enterprise architecture is really about strategy in motion. We're asking questions about what are we building toward? What do we need to do to get to the goals that we have? What do we have to stop doing if we want to win in the future? And that means we have to translate strategy, what we want to do, with execution reality. So we enterprise architects are not going to ask, what systems do you want? We're going to ask, what outcomes are we driving? What capabilities must exist to make this outcome real? See, architecture is really not so much about tech planning. Enterprise architecture is more about strategic decision making, with technology as our lever, as our tool to get to our ultimate goals. Now, the next set of attributes or skills for an enterprise architect is business acumen. This is a non-negotiable. So why does business acumen or business knowledge matter so much? Well, if you can't understand the company, or you can't understand the client, and you can't understand how that organization makes money, serves customers, manages risks, and even measures success, you'll architect anything other than what's needed, although it'll be a beautiful architecture, it just won't work. And the business acumen will enable you to speak and think in terms of revenue and growth, as opposed to, say, throughput, risk and compliance, as opposed to, say, controls, cost and investment, instead of, say, licenses, and time to market, instead of, say, sprints, which you would use in application development. So when you've got that level of business acumen, your architecture helps the business gain competitive advantage, not technical preference. Now, communication skills. Wow, communication skills are going to be absolutely critical for any enterprise architect, but especially for all architects, especially enterprise architects, but true for cloud architects, security architects, AI architects as well. So why communication? The architecture only becomes real when we align the humans and the goals with what we're ultimately trying to do. And we don't get people to be aligned because we made a 40-page PowerPoint deck. We need the stakeholders to be aligned and support our architecture and give us the right information. Otherwise, we've got nothing. So in order to align an architecture, we need to reduce complexity in our communication, adapt the message to the audience and the relevant. For example, I'm not going to speak to the CEO about how many packets per second can go through an interface on a router. But we need to be able to explain trade-offs without an ego and help the decision makers make the decision and make the decision feel obvious. That's a big part of our role. So helping the clients, guiding them to make the right decision to have the strategic or competitive advantage they're looking for. So we enterprise architects have to communicate at a lot of different levels. Executives. With executives, we have to talk outcomes. Here's what we'll gain, and here's what we'll reduce with this new architecture. At the same time, we need that kind of cross-functional clarity. Here's what changes with this new architecture and who's impacted. And we need that technical audience as well, and technical communication. Here's the pattern, here's the pattern's constraints, and here's the guardrails. So if you can't communicate, not only can you not get the requirements, your architecture will just live in theory and it'll never be brought to life. Now, sales and exercising influence is an absolute critical skill for the enterprise architects. And now we can all learn them. I mean, I went to school for sales, and many other executives I know have too. But this is a big one. So executives aren't going to invest in a technology that they don't understand what it is. They're not excited about microservices, but an executive might be concerned about and care about and be willing to fund faster product launches or operations that are more resilient, or something that could reduce risk for an organization, something that can enhance profitability, or something that can enhance customer experience. So as enterprise architects, we need to translate the technology and the architecture, the business architecture, the technology architecture, the data architecture, the application architecture, all this kind of stuff. We need to think in terms and translate it in terms of business value, the organization's risk posture, where and what should be invested in and when, and any kind of options and consequences to doing and acting and consequences for not acting. So with executives, we don't present a single architecture as a rule. We give options. Option A will give you this, but this risk might be higher. Option B is safer, but it'll cost a little more. Here's what I recommend and why. See, the C-suite and the board wants clarity. They want choices, and they want accountability to it. Now, in our list of the archetype of the enterprise architect, we really have to talk about CXO relevance and why it matters. So if the enterprise architecture is only relevant to the chief technology officer, you've skipped all the enterprise architecture. A true enterprise architecture enables, when you have conversations with the C-suite, strategic agility in their business. It enables them to change directions faster if the architecture is good. A great architecture, whether that be a business architecture and say a new business process or something like that, or an enhanced technology, can give that business a competitive differentiation. And that's what the CEO cares about. And you need to be able to communicate that with the CEO. Now, when you're communicating an architecture with the chief financial officer, you have to be very transparent about the cost. You have to talk about which investments should be prioritized and the return on investment from the investment that you're recommending, because that's what they care about to determine whether they should fund it or not. Now, if you're speaking to the chief operating officer, they're going to be looking for operational efficiency, for example, how the business is going to scale. The chief information security officer, for example, is going to care about security posture and regulatory readiness and resilience. And that's what I want you to think of. You have to be able to speak in the language of your client. And because enterprise architecture sits at that intersection of strategy, technology, and somewhere in between, that's why we enterprise architects need that bilingualness to speak both technical professionals and executives. Now, stakeholder management. Wow, architecture is kind of a context board, if you will, in that we're walking into an organization and there's various stakeholders that have different priorities. Sales needs this, product needs this, marketing needs this, support needs this, and often they conflict with each other. So if we're managing stakeholders, that means we may help influence and stakeholders and as well as decisions. We may build coalitions of support along the way. We may have to manage conflict in between stakeholders without escalating the conflict, and we have to create an alignment without forcing any kind of agreement. So this means you need to be able to categorize your stakeholders, because some stakeholders, for example, will need to make a decision. Other stakeholders only need to be heard. And that's our role, is to protect those organizations, to get it to its goals, and help get those stakeholders to do what's ever in the best interest of the business. And we need to learn from the stakeholders what's in the business for them. And ultimately, we need the stakeholder support. Otherwise, our architecture probably won't succeed. So it's not like we're trying to win a debate. We're trying to build alignment. Now, presentation skills. Wow. Incredibly important for any enterprise architect or any cloud architect or security architect. And see, our job is to take some wacky, incredible amounts of complexity with all our technology and make it understandable to the decision makers, make it controllable. So we've got a strategy to manage all this stuff that we have, and make it that people understand what they get from investing in technology. Presentation skills, not about developing pretty slides. It's about developing a strong narrative. It's about clean visuals. It's about making crisp recommendations and having being confident under scrutiny and defending your recommendations and why. So a great enterprise architect can walk in a room with executives and get the context done in, say, 60 seconds, the decision, what they're recommending in 30 seconds, and the trade-offs in less than 2 minutes. Because that's an executive-ready thing. To be able to walk into that room, give a presentation for 3 to 5 minutes with executives, and at the same time be able to do another presentation with a group of technical stakeholders, even if it's an hour. But the point is tailoring the presentation to what needs to be done to get the client from where they're at to where they need to go. Now, any architect, cloud architect, security architect, enterprise architect, this is an executive role and it is a leadership role, but it's a role of leading without authority. And what I mean by that is you may have people on your team that don't work for you. They work for other management and we're borrowing their people. So that means we're setting direction. We're kind of creating guardrails. We're influencing decisions. We're coaching teams and we're basically holding the line on principles. And that means we're managing stakeholders, we're managing vendors, we're managing teams. So there's a lot of leadership in the role. Now, not micromanagement, proper leadership where we create an environment where teams can be successful and we remove roadblocks for them and organize everybody to the same goal. Now, consulting skills, I will say that consulting skills are really critical to any architect. All these skills really are. And that's why I created them in the Archetype of the Enterprise Architect video that we're creating here. But consulting skills are underrated. A great enterprise architect, a great management and strategy consultant can walk in and discover what's necessary, discover what's going on by asking the right questions. A good consultant knows how to frame a problem. A great consultant knows how to do a root cause analysis to find the source of the actual problem. A great enterprise architecture consultant needs to facilitate workshops to bring a lot of ideas out of people, for example, to get people working together. We enterprise architects and management consultants have to manage ambiguity and produce decision-ready, decision-quality recommendations to the executive suite. So consulting skills are how you're going to tame the chaos. Here's what actually matters. Here's your options. And here's what we should do next. And that's why so many enterprise architects and so many strategy consultants, for that matter, often become executives later because they've got deep relationships and they're doing this kind of executive consulting work. Now, technical fundamentals matter too, but I left that actually for last because this is predominantly a business executive role. Enterprise architecture is 80 to 90% executive, but technology skills still matter because enterprise architects must have technical fundamentals. Now, this does not mean to be an expert in networking and an expert in security and an expert on IAM because that could take 3 lifetimes to master expertise in all those things. But we need the fundamentals to be credible across the network for the landscape. For example, we need to understand, say, networking, latency, connectivity, segmentation, how to keep the network reliable. We may need to understand data centers, what kind of constraints we have in data centers, our virtualization that we might use, whatever it takes to keep a data center running. We might need to know something about cloud computing, and we will, whether that be landing zones or shared responsibility models or scaling or the underlying technology in the cloud. Or security, like identity and threat modeling and zero trust principles. Sure, we need to know about this. And application architectures, for example, and integration patterns and API strategies. And even data, what kind of data governance we would have, data lineage, analytics platforms, data quality, and of course AI, where the right use cases are and models and how to set them up and whatever is necessary to be done. No, not for the hands-on perspective. But again, we're going to have a team for this, but we do want to have some fundamentals along the way. So you can see architecture fundamentals are not at all like engineering fundamentals. Engineering fundamentals are focused on implementation. How do we build it? How do we code it? How do we deploy it? How do we tune it? How do we operate it? And it is so good that we have wonderful engineers that can do this. Where we architects are focused on decision making in context. What should we build? And what not should we build? What constraints matter? What are the trade-offs across cost, risk, speed, quality, what have you? What's going to take to design over changes over time? Is this making it simple? creating standards that'll enable the organization to do more faster as opposed to suffocating the organization. So that's more of the architecture stuff. Engineering teaches how-to steps. Architecture is about judgment. Judgment's about pattern recognition and understanding the motivations and incentives and learning how the enterprises really behave and balancing truths and things that we can do and cannot do, the reality of the world. So tools and tactics for the engineers can be learned from tutorials, but architecture is learned by being taught architecture thinking, architecture frameworks, real scenarios, and feedback loops, because that's architecture. Architect, stakeholder, get feed information from the stakeholder, go back to your architecture team, design something else, go back to the stakeholder, what have you, and many cases and examples of that. So that's typically what we're talking about. So if you want to know the archetype of the enterprise architect, it's this. It's a strategist with business acumen. It's a communicator that can gain requirements and sell decisions to executives. It's a leader who aligns stakeholders and teams. It's a consultant who can frame problems and drive clarity. It's a technologist with the fundamentals of how the systems work and how they fit together, combined with a business strategist. And if you want to build an enterprise architect career, and I recommend it, this is one of the greatest careers out there. In fact, if you want to learn more about enterprise architecture, join me on our next Enterprise Architect webinar, where we'll discuss what we do in the role of an enterprise architect, everything you need to know to be hired as an enterprise architect, how to stand out as an enterprise architect, and why enterprise architecture is one of the most AI-proof careers out there. And it's all free. You can join this webinar. It'll be on Zoom, so you can ask me any questions you want to know about enterprise architecture, cloud architecture, security architecture, any of these careers that you desire. And you can register for this free Enterprise Architect webinar in the description of this video. And while you're in the description of this video, we have many free guides to help with cloud architect careers and enterprise architect careers and winning architecture interviews. So look in the description, register for a few things. They'll be emailed to you, and they are completely free. And if you enjoyed this video on the architect type of the enterprise architect, please give this video a like. Maybe leave a comment and let me know your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel to see more videos just like this to help you in your architect career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I hope to see you in another video real soon. Take care.